Carnegie Hall in New York City, the home of the world's greatest musical events. Today's event is one in a series of New York Philharmonic Young People's Concerts under the musical direction of Leonard Bernstein. And here is Mr. Bernstein.
A very happy hello to all our young friends. First, to those of you seated in this shining new white and gold Carnegie Hall. Isn't it a pleasure to have this hall still with us? And especially looking so handsome. And then, to those of you listening and watching everywhere in America and in Canada. For our first concert today, our subject is overtures. Why a program of just overtures? Well, I'll tell you. When I was a boy, first discovering music, the biggest kicks I got always seemed to come from overtures. It was an overture period in those days. I don't know why. Everybody seemed to be playing overtures all the time. But there was something so exciting about hearing a Rossini overture like The Barber of Seville or William Tell come swinging over the radio, or Poet and Peasant or Zampa, all those old favorites, that I used to wait breathlessly for each new program in the hopes that an overture would be played. You see, I heard most of my music at an early age over the radio because I wasn't lucky enough then to attend children's concerts in Boston, where I lived. Maybe, too, it was because at that early age, a whole long symphony in 4 movements might have been too much for me to absorb, as maybe it is for some of you. But an overture seemed just right, just the right length. And besides, it had such excitement. So today I'm going to try and recapture some of that excitement for myself, and I hope for you too, by playing a whole program of nothing but overtures. Now, I'm sure that part of the excitement about an overture comes from the fact that it's part of the theater. It combines all the wonders of music with the thrill of theater. After all, what is an overture? It's a beginning, an opening piece, usually written to be played in the musical theater before the curtain goes up. Now, I'm sure you all know the excitement of that moment before the curtain goes up, that breathless hush in the audience, and that sense of expecting, of suspense, of what's going to happen now. It's the same with or without music. Even in the movie theater, I'm sure you all know the excitement you feel when the lights go down and the Mickey Mouse or whatever it is flashes on the screen and everybody claps and says, oh boy, now it's beginning. It's the same in the musical theater or in the opera. The lights go out, there's that shivery moment of silence in the audience, and then the conductor appears out of nowhere in the orchestra pit, and there's the overture, that wonderful piece that gets you ready, that sets the mood, that starts your musical blood going. That's the kind of overture we're going to play first. The overture to the opera Semiramide by Rossini. Now, Rossini is the same Italian composer who wrote the William Tell overture, which I'm sure you all know as that galloping thing they always play for westerns and cowboys and the Lone Ranger. You all know that. Rossini also wrote The Barber of Seville and many others. But this opera, Semiramide, that's a long, hard word, isn't it? It doesn't mean a semi-ramide or half a ramide, whatever that would be. Semiramide is the name of an old Babylonian queen, and I won't bother you with the story of the opera at all. Besides, it's almost never sung anymore. But the overture to this opera is played all the time because it's one of the greatest examples of an exciting overture that gets your blood going, puts you in the mood for the rest of the performance. It has a really breathless beginning, which also may remind you of galloping, as a matter of fact. It goes like this. See what I mean? And then comes a slow part with a very famous tune in the French horns, like this. Then after that slow thing begins the main fast part, which is wildly exciting. Wait till you hear those violins skittering around like this. And then, best of all, come those long build-ups of sound that Rossini is so famous for. They're called crescendos, which means getting louder and louder and louder, like this. Those are the things that make a Rossini overture such fun and such excitement. I hope you all find it as much fun as I did when I was your age. Here goes. Now, we come to a much more serious overture. In fact, one of the great masterpieces of all music, the Third Leonore Overture by Beethoven. Now, that's a very peculiar name, Third Leonore Overture. Why the third? And what's more, Beethoven never even wrote an opera called Leonore. So what is this big mystery? Well, it's this way. Beethoven did write an opera called Fidelio, and he also wrote an overture to it, known as the Overture to Fidelio, and we're not going to play that one. But he also wrote 3 other overtures to it. You see, Beethoven was never satisfied. He was always trying out something new that might be better. Great artists are that way. They're very hard to satisfy, especially by their own work. And Beethoven, being one of the greatest, was therefore one of the hardest to satisfy, and the one who most of all kept changing and improving all the time to make his music better. So he wrote those 3 other overtures named Leonore, which at one point had been the name of this opera before it was called Fidelio. Now, of those 3, naturally, the third one is the greatest. In fact, it's such a marvelous piece that even today, it's always played at the opera house when Fidelio is given, not only before the opera, but during it, that is, just before the last act. The opera is the story of a man who is unjustly put in prison and is going to be killed and is saved in the nick of time by his faithful wife, Leonore, who gets into the prison disguised as a boy named Fidelio. Is that clear? I hope so. I can hardly follow it myself. Anyway, there's a great moment in this opera when the hero is saved and you hear a trumpet way off stage announcing the arrival of the governor, which means that the wicked jailer is not going to be able to do his dirty work after all. Now, this trumpet moment is kept by Beethoven in the overture, and I think you'll find it an unforgettable moment when you suddenly hear that trumpet call coming at you from way off somewhere behind those walls in the depths of Carnegie Hall. Here is Beethoven's great Third Leonore Overture. Well, so far, we've had an overture to an opera and an overture to the last act of an opera. Now we're going to hear something even more peculiar, which is an overture to no opera at all. Just an overture, period. There are such things, you know, which are also meant to be opening pieces, only they open symphony concerts instead of operas. But they're still overtures, you see? Simple. Now, the one we're going to play has another peculiar twist, which makes it even more confusing. It's not even called an overture. It's called a prelude. Now, don't let this throw you. A prelude is also an opening piece, a thing to be played first before the main event, like a preliminary boxing match at a prize fight. So why is it different from an overture? Well, for one thing, a prelude is usually a little shorter than an overture, and it usually doesn't have different parts, slow parts and fast parts, like the ones we've been hearing. A prelude is all in one, all in the same tempo, either slow or fast or middling. For instance, you all know the prelude to Carmen, which is an example of a fast prelude. And the prelude to the opera La Traviata is a slow prelude. If I could only sing. And the prelude to Die Meistersinger, the opera of Wagner, is what you might call a middling prelude. Bum, 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 so on. Well, the one we're going to play now is a slow one, a real beauty, this one, by the great French composer Debussy. It's called The Afternoon of a Faun. And if anyone asks you why this is a prelude, there just isn't any answer. Debussy called it the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, borrowing this title whole from a famous French poem by the same name by Mallarmé. That's another name you can forget. Now, of course, there is no opera attached to this prelude at all. It's just a piece to be played at the beginning of a program, although there's no law that says you can't play it in the middle of a program or at the end of a program either, for that matter. It's a lazy, hazy sort of piece, full of warm, stretchy sort of feelings, sometimes very delicate and sometimes quite passionate and full of goosebumps. It's a marvel, this piece. You can almost see and smell and feel a delicious summer afternoon as you listen to the music. It's like looking at a painting, only looking with your ears instead of with your eyes. That is a real beauty. I hope you didn't find that too slow, but it's just so moving and luscious that I couldn't resist playing it for you. Well, that's a lot of overtures we've been hearing. Actually, only 3 so far. It seems like 30. Been all kinds, all shapes and forms. One Italian, one German, one French. There's one kind we haven't heard yet, and that's an overture to an American Broadway musical comedy. So as a sort of dessert, we're going to end this program with a very short overture by, of all people, me. It's the overture to my operetta or musical or whatever you want to call it, named Candide. I wrote this show about 4 years ago, and it didn't do very well. It ran only about 2 months on Broadway and then closed. Very sad. Especially sad because the show was supposed to be very funny, not sad at all. Well, the show is temporarily over, but the overture lingers on, I hope. And I also hope it will give you an idea of some of the fun and frolic that was in that show. Here's the overture to Candide.
From Carnegie Hall, another in the New York Philharmonic Young People's Concerts, under the musical direction of Leonard Bernstein, has been presented by Shell Oil Company, Sign of a Better Future for You. This is the first in a series of 4 concerts in the Young People's series. The next concert will be presented 5 weeks from today on Sunday, February 12th, at which time Mr. Bernstein invites us to celebrate the 60th birthday of the great American composer Aaron Copland in a program devoted entirely to his music. Mr. Bernstein's guests will be Aaron Copland, who will conduct one of his own works, and the baritone William Warfield. The preceding program was pre-recorded at Carnegie Hall, New York City, and was produced and directed by Roger Englander.